All right, welcome to episode 105 of the Random Thoughts podcast. Pretty exciting times.
We've had a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's been flat chat here.
It's been great. First off, you were on another podcast.
Well, yeah, so last week we had, 2 weeks ago rather, we had Jamie Smith.
I feel like I haven't been. I'm rusty. I'm not sure I can do
This
this
feels
anymore.
weird. It's been a while. So 2 weeks ago, I went down to Melbourne Strength Culture and I had Jamie Smith, who we both met during that week. Felt like we'd known him for so long because of social media and
It was
whatnot.
I went from never having met him to I saw him at the at a deacon meeting in the morning, and then all of a sudden, and also we're seeing each other heaps.
And so
Nice.
we had Jamie on and talked a little about Jamie's past and his path to where he is now, running his own powerlifting sort of specialist gym in the similar sort of area, so just around the corner. And then following on from that,
I think he's got a great niche,
Yeah.
and a great passion, and he's already doing great. But I think it's going to be. I like his strategy, and I like his application, and I like his energy. I just think he's going to kick butt.
Together with Charlie.
Those guys are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chestnut checkers, as they say. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And so then I shared the favour and I then went on their podcast. Quantum Lifting, it's called. It's hosted by Charlie, who's Jamie's business partner. Yeah. And
We'll share a link to that.
Share a link to that episode. It was a lot of fun. And it's a lot our show's called Random Thoughts, but theirs really is quite random. We talked about all kinds of stuff. So we talked about meditation and birds in gyms and powerlifting and VBT. It was great fun.
Vegetarianism, all sorts of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, boys, for having us on, and thanks for being on our show as well.
Yeah, it was great.
You've also had a busy last week.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I did my first proper radio segment yesterday. It was really interesting. It's a very different cadence. Like on a podcast, you can slow right down, you can speed right up.
We can bounce around topics. Yeah.
Yeah. 15-minute segment on national radio.
It was with the ABC.
ABC, yep. A show called Life Matters with Michael McKenzie, who's a proper you're in a proper studio, and it's very headphones, and you've got to stand just from the mic, and
the mic's up off the
they've
table
got
as well.
really good noise cancelling. The whole place. So actually, if you've got some sort of sensitivity to noisy places, go to ABC. There's just sound deadening everywhere. It's I feel like you could do really good work there.
Like a float tank kind of vibe. Yeah, nice.
And he was interviewing me about ACL, about the prevalence of ACL injuries in juniors, and because there's been like a 70% increase.
It's crazy right now in Australia.
It's
Yeah,
huge. And it was really good and an interesting challenge. One thing that I regretted was you've got to have, like, they come at you with questions, you've got to have quick sound.
Bang,
you feel
bang,
like
bang.
there's pressure to not have dead air. Whereas here we can have a little bit of dead air and people they'll keep driving.
I hope they'll forgive us. Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about that, and I got to talk about the fact that I think one of the major causes of the rise in ACL injury is the lack of free play for kids when they're young. That lateral
Exploration.
and that lack of movement literacy, and the fact that they're too much early specialization, and they're good at their technical tasks of their sport, but take them out of their comfort zone and then not as much.
Or introduce fatigue and things like that. We shouldn't talk too much on that. I think ACL in juniors is a whole episode that we should dig into.
Well, I really want to do one soon because the thing was I did that, and then I felt like I hadn't done the topic justice because I talked about one of the 10 factors. Yeah. But yeah, it was really good fun.
Yeah, nice.
And we'll put a link to their website, which has the podcast version of that interview there as well.
Yeah, nice stuff. And then on top of all that, we are hosting we've hosted a few guest speakers and sort of workshops here for strength coaches and sports science students.
So we had Dan John, which was a 3-day
intensive. Was that 3 years ago?
The Art of Coaching.
2.5 years ago.
That was
now?
great.
That was amazing. Dan was incredible.
And for those that don't know, if you don't know who Dan John is and you're interested in strength and conditioning, go look him up. In his words, he's the crazy uncle of strength and conditioning.
Which is pretty accurate. Yeah.
That was amazing. And then we had Brett Bartholomew as well.
Yep.
And that was also just brilliant. Yeah.
Now we're kind of hosting our own. So together with Great North Coaching, with Josh, who's been on the podcast before.
So Josh Plant, who was on the podcast with the concussion episode.
Which is a phenomenal story if you haven't listened to that one.
His story is amazing. And yeah, he was the impetus for this. And thank you, Josh. I really appreciate it. I think it's one of those things where you just need we've wanted to do this kind of thing. And Josh just came up with it all. And I was like, how do we not do?
Let's go. Let's get
do
started.
this?
Yeah.
And so I couldn't be more excited. I think it's one of the most exciting things that we've done.
Yeah, so on September 9th, it's a Sunday, we are hosting, together with Great North Coaching with Josh Plant, we're hosting a full day of power.
Yeah.
So Josh's favourite subject, one of our favourite subjects. We're going to talk all about power development, power training, transfer to sport, expression of power in athletics, in sport, on the court, on the field. And we've got 4 speakers. They've each got about a 90-minute slot. Lunch is provided, all that kind of stuff.
We've made it, one of the great things I think of having a business is you get to make stuff that you would like.
Yeah.
And so we've made just the thing that
scratch your own itch.
Yeah. So we've made the workshop we would like to go to. So plenty of time for practical stuff, not because often you can go to a workshop and you feel like it's just too much theory and you want to get out there and do the stuff. And there isn't the space. And the thing that occurred to us is we've got a beautiful classroom and a beautiful gym that are attached. We can do really good practical stuff as well. We've got heaps of racks, we've got heaps of space. So that's great.
And I think the going between the two, going theory prac, is what makes information sticky. So you'll remember more, so retention will be higher. But also it makes it more usable. So you can do a theory thing at a presentation, and you go, well, I just need to sit down with that and marinate and think and experiment, and you'll never actually apply it.
It's so common. Like that Monday morning applicability, like it's actually, yeah. And also the big thing is you learn about a fascinating, but somewhat complicated thing to apply.
Concept or theory, whatever it might be.
And then if you do go and try and practice it, you go a day later, 2 days later, even if you're really diligent, often there's some question that occurs to you that kind of acts as a roadblock because it's like, oh, but how do I blah, blah, blah. The beauty of this...
Too late, your presenters are gone by that stage.
The beauty of this format is you can actually say those questions will occur to you because there's always stuff that doesn't occur to you till the rubber hits the road and you're actually doing it. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
And also we get to make it catered, which I think is important.
Yeah. Good healthy lunch for everyone, nice and delicious, plenty of protein.
There's that thing where you go to a thing and it's a Sunday and you haven't organised your time and then it's lunchtime and it's like you have to dash off somewhere, wolf down something, get indigestion and rush back. It's like, no, why don't we just cater it and just have people... And then what I really like about that is at its heart, the thing with this is it's learning, which is great, but it's also connecting and bringing a relatively disparate group of strength and conditioning coaches and sports science students, bringing them together. So it is sort of there's a networking connection thing, which I think is a bit lacking in Australia in general and in Melbourne. We've got an amazing community of people amazing collection of people.
Doing some of the best work in the world.
But not as much of a sense of community. A little bit at the very, very elite level, like the AFL guys all know each other. But even then, just bringing that connection, that community together. So I think that's going to be pretty cool.
So we can share ideas, bounce things around, talk shop, and share ideas. That's how we all get better.
Yeah. So it's going to be great. Let's talk about the other presenters and what you've been. In typical Durham fashion, just before your holiday, I was like, hey, we're going to do this thing. I need you to do this, and that.
This episode airs on Friday. I will be stand up paddleboarding somewhere in Vanuatu or hiking to a waterfall. So I won't get to listen to this back until a week after everyone else. So enjoy the cold, Melbourne. I am not here right now. But
it's been a mad sprint to get everything.
This last week's been a bit of a mad sprint. So I'm one of the presenters. I'm super excited that Josh and you suggested I do it. So I'll be one of the presenters. We've got Jamie Smith, we mentioned before, who's on the podcast. He'll be talking as well. Chris Ackland from...
So let's slow down and talk about these guys. So Jamie, I think, has so much interesting insights. He did arguably, you'd have to say... one of the top 5 internships in the world.
From competitiveness to get into and quality of the internship.
So he did the Eric Cressy performance.
At Cressy Sports Performance in Massachusetts.
Yeah, and so, and if you want to hear the story of how you go about applying for that, listen to the podcast episode.
Jamie's got the secret sauce.
I love it.
It's such an interesting process.
Yeah. And so I think he'll bring some really great insights into rotational power, that transverse translation.
Yeah, so people in Melbourne probably think of Jamie as a powerlifting guy, but he's actually got a really good grounding in shoulders, rotational, transverse plane mechanics from his Cressy times. And he's also spent some time in the AFL development pathways while working at the VFL. So he does know his athletic development as well.
I think he's got a really interesting sort of skill set. So I'm fascinated to hear that. It's going to be great.
So he's going to talk med balls, lateral and sort of rotational plyometric progressions. I'm going second.
Yes, but we're going to leave yours till last.
I get to go lucky last.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
then next up we have a guy called Chris Ackland.
And so Chris is an Olympic lifting specialist
and coach. He's just opened up in the last 3 months his own gym in Carrum Downs.
And what's it?
It's called Irontribe.
Irontribe, yeah.
And he does Olympic weightlifting, not just for people who are competing though. So if you just want to learn it, if you want to master the skill of what is Olympic weightlifting, he specializes in that. And so his talk is going to focus all on not just Olympic lifting at a competitive level, which is what he does and he's competed at national level and state comps, but also how you can then transfer different parts of that to athletic development.
Okay.
So it was really interesting when I got to meet him and went down to his facility. He was talking about, like, everyone talks about
his facility looks great.
It's really nice. It still smells good too. You can still smell his paint. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So he's got a heap of platforms, heap of empty space, and lots of barbells. So it's perfect for what he does. But he's going to talk about not just like triple extension and rack positions and things like that, but also how you can break down the Olympic lifts, use different parts of them for different things, how you can sort of troubleshoot as you're going through that. So you might have an athlete who wants to do a clean, but they can't get to a rack position. So what can you do to work on that, but also still get the qualities of Olympic lifting along the way?
I can't wait for that. I think that's, it's such a good approach. The idea that you can, for some people, it's going to be appropriate to chase the full Olympic lifting, capability.
Yep,
But for others, it's 80-20 it, and let's work out how. And so often it's like either you go full or you go 80-20.
Yeah.
But sort of full or minimal effective dose, I suppose. But the idea of also that maybe there's even more middle ground where you can actually work on the components to get good at a clean
and different progressions for different times and how you can load that appropriately.
I think that's going to be great.
So that's going to be a lot of fun too. I think he's got plenty of practical plan for that as well, so we can actually get out there and chuck the shoes on. So if you've got Olympic lifting shoes, bring them along.
Yeah.
And then actually get on the platforms, and we've got plenty of bars here to work on that stuff.
It's going to be great.
Our final presenter for the day is Jason Stacy, who shared a little bit of his story in the video. So we're doing a promotional video for each of the coaches presenting, which will be out in the next few weeks. He sort of gave us a little bit of a tease about his background, but he's done some stuff. So he's worked in jiu-jitsu, professional dancing, running, tennis.
A long time on the tennis tour, correct?
With pros, working in the ATP. Yep.
And I think my limited experience with tennis, and we've done a bit and been successful here with
got a handful of tennis
players, is that what a great way to refine and hone your coaching ability, to have to work with sometimes pretty difficult environments and people, and also just the constant, you don't your perfect, your dream setup is where you have a big budget, high performance center, or you have
heaps of gear, heaps of tech,
and you can do everything on your timeline when you want, and everything's just set. Whereas tennis is like the reverse. You're constantly flying, and it's different environments, different gyms. Like your level of adaptability. That would
really got to be flexible and working with what you got. And
it's kind of like because he's out, like for us, this is our home.
Yeah,
and we come here and we know exactly where everything is, what to do, how to do it. So there's none of that as a challenge. We get to just focus on
doing great coaching. Yeah. That's the biggest challenge for us, is just delivering a good service.
Whereas if your other challenge is just, okay, how do I actually access?
Where's the closest gym?
Yeah. So I think that'd be really interesting. And he's going to be talking about.
So he's talking about a whole bunch of stuff, and he's going to be sort of keeping it a little more free flowing, I think, with his presentation. So he's going to talk about arousal states. So the idea of being over aroused, under aroused, hitting that sweet spot. And his company's called Sweet Spot Coaching.
Nice. Getting
your athlete in that zone of optimal performance. So he's going to talk about arousal levels, tension, creating tension.
Let's go back to the arousal. And there's no danger of stealing his thunder because he's going to have so much insight to talk about. But I think this is a really underappreciated area for athletes. It's kind of like people can think that there's no such thing as being too excited.
Just keep getting fired up.
And you see it all the time. The best example, I think, is the first quarter of AFL Grand Finals, where it's just mostly junk.
It's just mess.
And because everyone's over aroused and they're just so out of their bodies almost.
And just wired. Yeah, just buzzing.
Wired. And it's almost like the first team that gets their arousal level down adequately
can take advantage,
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting to talk. And then there's others I think also there's a thing where people's what I see is their arousal level might be too high. They're too hyped for their games. They're not going to play well, but it's too low for their lift. You know, where they don't quite have their. I don't expect people to have their game face on when they come to train, but
at least know where it is.
Close to it.
Yeah, go from chat, try and do a 3-hour round. It's like, no, lock in a bit.
I'm on a bit of an old man quest at the moment on use of the phones in the gym. Yeah. So I've been catching people and reading them the writer because it's just crept in a little bit lately. I've just noticed. And we've been pretty good at it. I think better than most at keeping the phones away. But there's nothing better than to puncture that energy, that
intensity,
than being on the phone. So I'll be interested to see what he's got to add. That'll be great.
Yeah, so that'll be a big part of our arousal. And we'll be talking about game day strategies along with training strategies, so how you can turn it on, turn it off in training, how you can get back to rest and digest after a workout, after a game, things like that. But one of the big parts is about being primed for that first play, the first whistle, the first set, the first point, whatever game, whatever sport you play, first round, getting that you don't need 2 or 3 to warm up, that you are there from
on it.
You avoid that AFL grand final effect of being over-roused, under-roused for the first quarter. You hit that first zone and you go.
And just go.
Yeah, and so that's a big part of what he'll be talking about as well, is strategies for that. And also, it's individual. So within sports, obviously, boxing, for example, has a higher arousal level to, say, figure skating, where you need to be calm and relaxed. But also, individuals within different sports will have different sweet spots, as he calls it.
I love the contrast. I was just thinking, you think of boxing, think of ultimate contrast, and it's probably archery. You know, where you've just got to be really
and repeat the same movement over and over again.
Yeah. And so I'll be really interested to take notes on that and to chat to. So Gavin Freeman, who's working with us, who's a sports psychologist and worked with archery teams. I think it'll be interesting to see what his perspective on all that stuff is as well. I think it's selfishly, I think it's great just to have these people in the house and to get to pick their brains.
It's going to be fantastic.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
And now let's talk a little about your VBT thing, because we have been very excited about velocity-based training for quite a while, and we've been playing around with it. I bought a Gymaware, seems like 1,000 years ago. But
unit number 4. If anyone's got a Gymaware, check your unit number. Ours is 446.
Okay, so
in the first 500, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think it was probably 8 years ago.
Wow.
And so Gymaware have come on board and they're sponsoring the event.
Which is awesome. So exciting.
It's important to be clear on our policy on sponsoring stuff too. Yep. And that is that
we don't do it very often, first of all.
Very rare. And it's only for stuff that we really believe in. And the Gymaware, their linear position transducer is world-class, gold standard really.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited to have them on board. Their thing, and it enables you. It's a pretty big. I think you should talk about what, in general terms, about what VBT, the magic, because it's the missing ingredient, really.
It really is, and it's the missing ingredient when it comes to transferring the stuff you do in the gym onto the court or the field or in the ring. And I think that's some people think of velocity-based training as just means you lift fast. It's simply not the case. Yeah. You can still lift heavy and grind through your sets, like if you're a power lifter, if you're an Olympic lifter, whatever it might be, or if you're chasing max effort strength, but you use VPD as a way of adjusting your loads on a daily or a weekly basis. Yeah. And so you use something like a Gymaware, which is the gold standard, a linear positional transducer. You put a unit on the ground, attach the string to the bar, and it tells you how fast you lifted the bar.
I should say like cord. String sounds a bit,
Yeah, the cord, the rope, the cord. Yeah. String sounds a little bit casual. It's a precise
piece
of kit. It's heavy too.
When I first bought it, people in the gym were like, "What's that?" Because it looks like something from Mission Impossible.
It's like a space age brick. Really, like it's got curved edges and it beeps at you.
And it's got this really strong magnet, so you can put it on a squat rack.
Yeah.
And it just works like. If you're putting it on the ground and then attaching to the bar and then you're squatting so that it is lengthening, it'll measure that. But you can also just put it on the top of the squat rack and set it up so that it's shortening, and it just works out what's going on. It sorts it all out for you in the background.
The system just automatically, I see you've got it upside down. Carry on. It just works. There's no upside down setting. It's just the default. It's really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and so you can use VBT for a whole host of reasons, and that's going to be the basis of my talk. I'll be talking about, because I think we're excited about VBT, and the future of it and where it's going. But I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect between what the research is saying, what the companies are providing, like Gymaware, and then what we can actually do on a day-to-day basis, because there's so many options. And so it's like, well, what metric do I need? How do I measure it? What's good? What's bad?
And I think, is it okay? Can I talk about the way it's not going to replace coaches?
No.
But
it quantifies them.
They do your 5RM for a triple thing. Can we talk about that for a
minute?
Yeah. So arguably, if you're trying to develop good strength and power, the perfect way to achieve that is not training to failure. So if you're 5 rep max, if you can do 100 kilos and 5 is the absolute max you can squat that weight for, that's your 5RM. Perfect training is actually doing a 5RM weight for 3 reps, doing a 5RM for a triple.
The boys at Strength Culture do singles at triples. Singles at 3RM. So same concept.
Same concept.
Leaving 2 in the tank.
So you're working at really good intensity, but you're not. And you talk to.
We've done an episode about training to failure. I think if you listen to that, that'll provide good context to this.
But judging, the hard thing, the thing that takes years and years to pick up is the ability to accurately judge where someone's at with that.
What 3 reps should be and what weight it should be.
And it's just something I developed a feel for over a long time, and you've got a feel for that as well, and our other coaches do too. But it takes quite a lot to get. Whereas what VBT offers you is it's like the machine will tell you.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It is an advanced method, so you wouldn't use it with rookie athletes who are still learning movement patterns. It's for your big dogs, your stronger athletes who are lifting 1 to 1.5, even up to 2 times body weight on their big lifts. And you use this as a way of going, okay, do your first few warm-up sets. You can use those numbers to then calculate, okay, speeds are good today. Let's proceed with a big program. Not so good today. You're a little flat, you're a little off. We'll dial things back. We'll do our triples at this weight. And so you can, instead of just, doing a 1RM, the traditional method was you'd do a 1RM test every 3 months. You'd use those numbers to determine your percentages, and then your program would be set kind of in stone from that testing day. VBT allows you to test more dynamically without burning your athletes out with 1RMs.
And I think it really fits in beautifully with our opportunistic periodization thing as well. It's just you get to kind of make hay while the sun shines when someone's fresh. And a massive benefit, I think, is that it gets athletes competing around velocity, which channels their intent to move.
Yeah, and so they put more oomph into the bar or exertional effort.
It's amazing how many times we've seen people who were actually, if you said to them what level of intensity were you working at, they'd say, I was at 99.
And just giving it everything.
And then you bring in VBT.
You slap a Gymaware on the bar.
And there's you get an output number for how fast you did it. And the intensity, it goes up to 30%. Yeah.
And that's that transfer part. If you can lift your weights, whatever loads, whether it's heavy, whether it's light and power stuff, if you can lift whatever load you're lifting with more intensity and more exertion, and actually pushing the bar with greater intent to move, you're going to get a better transfer into your jumping, your sprinting, your power, your explosiveness.
Because not that much sport, in terms of the actual sport, not that much sport is about grinding your way through with strength.
No.
Most of it's about explosive.
Popping. Yeah, exploding, cracking.
That pop. So, so I'm super excited about that. I think that's going to be really interesting.
And so,
is it written?
It's written in my head. I've written it in my head. I've got it onto some cue cards. I have not yet got it into a slide format yet, but I know exactly what I want to talk about. I know how I want to talk about it, and it's. I think what I'll be giving is real practical. This is how we use VBT. These are some options we're looking at. Here's how you could use that for your lifts. Whether it's deadlift, squats, bench, Olympic lifts, whatever it might be. This is how, this is a method. This is the metric you need. These are some standards you should be hitting. Here's how you would do it literally during a workout. And I think that's what sometimes is missing with VBT.
And then we'll get to have a play with it as well. Get out there and do a little bit. Yeah. So thanks once again to Gymaware for getting on board with that. It's super exciting.
Really exciting, yep.
And we'll have some links in the show notes.
Plenty. So I'll link to our Intent to Move episode, our Train to Failure episode, to the Jamie Smith episode, your ABC show as well. I haven't actually listened to it yet. So
it's all right. I talk a little fast a couple of times, but it's okay. I didn't mumble.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
And with regard to the tickets, so
September 9th, 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. It's a full day.
Don't leave it to the last minute because we've sold quite a few already, and that's without really pushing it that much. We've got a few other levers to pull. So
I'd say our pushing effort so it's been an RP of 6. There's more stuff going out.
So this goes out on Friday.
Yep.
If you're interested in going, I would strongly suggest that if you do it by Saturday because
By the next few days, yeah.
And I mean, to give you context, I had a colleague of mine who works in Sydney who asked if he could he can't attend, but he just wants to buy a ticket so that he can get the materials. I'm like, that's a pretty nice compliment. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, so September 9th, the ticket link will be with the podcast, both on our blog, on Facebook, and if you're listening on a podcast, it'll be linked in the show notes there as well. coreadvantage.com.au/power.
And it's also one of those things where this is our first tester of it. If it goes well, we're going to do a lot of these, and I think it could be really good. So if you are interested if you like the concept, get around the first one so we know it's a goer.
Or at least give us some feedback as well.
I'm really interested I would really like to hear about blah, blah, blah. That'd be great.
If power is not your thing for whatever crazy reason, and you want to hear about something else, whether it be sprinting more, conditioning more, that's something we can look at in the future as well.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Thanks, guys.